I'm Shantae, and I'm a mother of 4. I breastfed all of my children, and this was back in the 1990s, mid-1990s, when nobody was really talking too much about breastfeeding, especially for women of color. There was no lactation consultants or professionals to really help. And I definitely did not have a community of other breastfeeding mothers, certainly not breastfeeding mothers that looked like me. And just even being in simple things like mommy groups was very difficult for me. This was a decision that I wanted to make, and my family was not supportive at the time. It was a foreign concept to them at the time. They grew up in the 70s, and so there was this whole liberation of feminism that was rising back in the 70s. And so it was about women going back to work and women's lib and feminism. And so breastfeeding was just not the thing. Burn your bras, but don't use your breast to feed your children. And so here I was deciding to breastfeed all of my children, and I did not get the support, not from my parents and certainly not from my grandparents. I remember my father and my grandmother was just really against the whole idea of breastfeeding. They didn't feel like she was getting enough food. They didn't feel like it was adequate. They wanted me to give her cereal, and she was less than 6 weeks old at the time. And it was, why are you making that decision? Without the support, it's very easy to quit. But I wanted what was best for my child. Meant that I was alone in doing so, then I would do it. Luckily, my husband was very supportive, as any father should be. They want their children to be healthy and strong, and we actually studied and researched together. So I did have his support. However, it was difficult because he was overseas. We were a military family, so he was not always around. And I remember one incident being in Utah, especially breastfeeding in public was very difficult. What a lot of people don't realize is breastfeeding is difficult as it is, but especially for me as a woman of color, is because our bodies for many, many years have been sexualized and demonized and not looked at as normal. They didn't have all the conveniences that you have now in 2019. This was back in 1995. And, I'd always bring a blanket. And I remember I would always bring 2, one that I could wrap her up in so she was nice and warm, and another one I could drape over my shoulder. And they didn't have the clothes back then to breastfeed or make it convenient to breastfeed in public were very, very scarce, and were very, very expensive. And we were a very young couple, so we really didn't have the finances to splurge on breastfeeding clothing, let alone barely. I owned 2 breastfeeding bras. And I remember just one time we were done with church and we went to the mall. We decided to take a walk through the mall, and she got hungry. So I told my husband to kind of, go inside and go ahead and do what you need to do. I'll sit here on the bench and breastfeed her. Well, I had forgotten one blanket. So of course I'm going to use the one small teeny receiving blanket that I had to drape over my shoulder. Apparently we waited too long to start feeding her because she got very fussy and started proceeding to kick off the receiving blanket. She's kicking off the blanket, she's fussy, she's squirmy, and the noise and the commotion that was being caused during that time pulled a lot of tension to myself and what I was doing. And my husband was several stores away, so I couldn't get his attention. Back then, we did not have cell phones. In 95, cell phones weren't a huge thing, and we just did not have cell phones. And I remember a woman summoning a security officer who came and told me that you can't do that here. And it was summer, and Utah doesn't get very hot, but if you're sitting in a car and it's, 89 degrees outside, you can bet your bottom dollar it's at least 96 inside the car. And I didn't want to run the car and run the air. And, I asked if there's a room or something that we could go to. And back then they weren't very accommodating for breastfeeding mothers. And unfortunately, I was escorted to the women's bathroom, which unfortunately this bathroom did not have a small couch or chair in the lobby area of it. And so I had to feed my daughter in a bathroom stall, in a public bathroom stall where people were doing their business in the next stall. And I just remember sitting there. You know, public bathroom stalls don't have, you know, seats or tops to go down. And here I am, I'm sitting on this toilet in my dress, in my church dress, trying not to get it on the floor. I'm already sitting on a seat in my church dress, which just the thought of it is disgusting. And people are doing their business all around me. And I just remember thinking, I would never eat in a bathroom. People don't even like really sitting near a bathroom in a restaurant. And here I was feeding my child in a disgusting public bathroom stall because there was no place to feed my baby. And that was really hard. And that was the first time that I thought I should quit. But I didn't quit. And I went on and I breastfed my other 3 children because they deserved the best, but they did not deserve to eat in a bathroom stall. And unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of support back then. But I'm grateful that my daughters will have the support of the birth workers that are supportive all throughout America, and especially for Black Breastfeeding Week. So other young mothers, especially women of color, can know and have the support that I didn't have. And it's important for us to end the stigma of automatically sexualizing Black women's bodies and Black bodies, period, and really have the support and the equal means to nourish and care for our children just like anybody else. We deserve that. And so I'm glad that there's something like Black Breastfeeding Week to celebrate us mothers that are giving our child the best that we can.